The janitor's promise. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Meridian Corporate Tower, casting long golden rectangles across the polished marble floors. In the quiet hours before the business world awakened, Marcus Thompson pushed his cleaning cart down the empty hallway on the 20th floor. His footsteps echoed softly in the silence, a familiar rhythm that had marked his mornings for the past 3 years. Marcus was not the kind of man you would notice in a crowd. At 42, he had the weathered hands of someone who had worked with them his entire life, and kind eyes that seemed to hold more stories than he ever shared. He wore his navy blue janitor's uniform with quiet dignity, understanding that his work mattered even if others rarely acknowledged it. The corporate offices were his domain during these peaceful early hours. He knew every corner, every executive's preference for how their office should be arranged, every small detail that made their workday run smoothly. But most importantly, he knew the people who worked here, even if they didn't know him. On this particular morning, as Marcus cleaned the executive conference room, he heard something that made him pause. It was a sound so faint he almost missed it, a child's laughter, quickly followed by silence. He set down his spray bottle and listened carefully. The sound had come from the CEO's office at the end of the hall. Marcus had been cleaning Robert Mitchell's office for 3 years, but he had never heard a child's voice there before. Mitchell was known throughout the building as a demanding, ambitious man who rarely spoke of his personal life. Most employees whispered that work was his only family. Marcus resumed his cleaning, but the curiosity stayed with him. As he worked his way down the hallway, he could hear muffled voices through the thick wooden door of Mitchell's office. One was clearly the CEO's deep, authoritative tone. The other was lighter, younger, and strangely quiet. When Marcus reached Mitchell's office door, he knocked gently as he always did before entering to clean. "Come in," came the familiar voice, though it sounded strained. Marcus pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside with his cart. The office was impressive as always, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, rich mahogany furniture, and awards lining the walls. But today, something was different. Sitting in one of the large leather chairs was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She had Mitchell's dark hair and serious expression, but her eyes held a sadness that seemed too heavy for someone so young. She wore a pretty pink dress and small white shoes, and she was holding what appeared to be a worn stuffed elephant. Mitchell stood behind his desk, running his hands through his hair in frustration. When he saw Marcus, his expression shifted to one of embarrassment mixed with desperation. "Marcus," Mitchell said, his voice unusually soft. "This is my daughter, Emma. She's going to be staying with me for a while." Marcus nodded politely and smiled at the little girl. "Hello, Emma. That's a nice elephant you have there." Emma looked up at Marcus with curious eyes but said nothing. She simply hugged her stuffed animal closer to her chest. Mitchell cleared his throat. "Emma doesn't speak much these days. She's been through some difficult times recently." Marcus could hear the pain in the man's voice. He had never seen his usually confident boss look so vulnerable, so lost. The little girl continued to watch Marcus silently, as if studying him. "Would it be all right if I cleaned around you both?" Marcus asked gently. "I promise to be very quiet." Mitchell nodded gratefully. As Marcus began his work, moving carefully and slowly around the office, he noticed how Emma followed his movements with interest. When he dusted the bookshelf near her chair, she tilted her head slightly, watching the way he handled each item with care. After several minutes of comfortable silence, Marcus approached the small area where Emma sat. He knelt down to her level, moving slowly so as not to startle her. "You know," he said in a soft voice, "I have a granddaughter about your age. Her name is Sarah, and she loves elephants too. What's your elephant's name?" Emma's grip on the stuffed animal tightened, but she remained silent. However, Marcus noticed something in her eyes, a flicker of interest, perhaps even the beginning of trust. Over the following days, this scene repeated itself. Marcus would arrive each morning to find Emma in her father's office, always quiet, always watching. Mitchell, meanwhile, grew increasingly desperate. Phone calls to child psychologists filled his day, and Marcus could hear the frustration in his voice as appointment after appointment yielded no progress. Marcus began to adjust his cleaning schedule, spending extra time in Mitchell's office. He would talk softly to Emma about simple things, the weather outside the window, the birds he saw on his walk to work, stories about his granddaughter Sarah. Emma never responded with words, but Marcus noticed she began to position herself where she could see him better. One morning, about 2 weeks after Emma's arrival, Marcus found Mitchell pacing behind his desk while Emma sat in her usual chair, coloring with crayons. "The doctors say there's nothing physically wrong with her," Mitchell said, his voice heavy with worry. "They say she's choosing not to speak. Her mother died in a car accident 6 months ago. Emma was in the car but wasn't hurt physically. She spoke normally for a few weeks after the accident, but then one day she just stopped." Marcus felt his heart clench with sympathy. He looked at Emma, who had paused in her coloring to listen, though she pretended to be focused on her paper. "Sometimes," Marcus said quietly, "people need time to find their voice again. Especially little people who have seen big, scary things." Mitchell stopped pacing and looked at Marcus with desperate eyes. "I don't know what to do. I'm failing her. I work 16-hour days, I know how to run a company with thousands of employees, but I can't help my own daughter speak." Marcus continued cleaning, thinking carefully about his words. Maybe she needs to feel safe first. Really safe. Sometimes that takes longer than we want it to. That afternoon, Marcus made a decision. Instead of finishing his cleaning and leaving as usual, he asked Mitchell if he could stay a few extra minutes. "I was wondering if Emma might like to help me with something," Marcus said. "I noticed she's been watching me clean, and sometimes children like to feel useful." Mitchell looked uncertain, but Emma had already set down her crayons and was looking at Marcus with clear interest. Marcus pulled out a small, soft cloth from his cart. "This is for dusting the really important things," he explained to Emma. "Things that need gentle care. Would you like to help me?" Emma hesitated for a long moment, then slowly reached out and took the cloth. Marcus smiled and guided her to a low shelf that held some of her father's awards. Very gently, Marcus said, showing her the motion. "Just like petting your elephant." Emma began to carefully dust the awards, her small face serious with concentration. Mitchell watched in amazement. It was the first time he had seen his daughter engage with anything since arriving at his office. This became their new routine. Each morning, Marcus would save a special cleaning task for Emma. She would help him arrange flowers, dust picture frames, or organize papers. She never spoke, but her eyes began to show more life, more curiosity about the world around her. Marcus also began bringing small gifts, not toys, but simple things that might interest an observant child. A smooth stone he found on his walk, a pretty leaf that had fallen from a tree, a small magnifying glass to look at things more closely. Emma would examine each gift carefully, and Marcus could see her mind working, even if she didn't share her thoughts aloud. 3 weeks into this routine, something changed. Marcus was showing Emma how to clean the large window that overlooked the city when she suddenly pressed her small hand against the glass and made a soft sound. It wasn't quite a word, but it was the first sound Marcus had heard her make. Mitchell, who had been on a phone call, immediately ended his conversation and looked over hopefully. But Marcus simply continued talking to Emma as if nothing unusual had happened, not wanting to put pressure on her. "The city looks different from up here, doesn't it?" he said gently. "All those people down there, going about their days. I wonder what stories they all have." Emma made another soft sound, almost like she was trying to agree. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday morning. Marcus arrived to find Emma sitting by the window, watching the raindrops race down the glass. She looked sad, more withdrawn than usual. "The rain makes me think of my Sarah," Marcus said as he began his work. "She loves to jump in puddles. Gets her shoes all muddy, and her grandmother pretends to be angry, but really she's just happy to see Sarah having fun." Emma turned to look at Marcus, and for the first time, he saw tears in her eyes. "Sometimes," Marcus continued gently, "I think the sky cries when it's sad, just like people do. And that's okay. It's good to let the sadness out sometimes." Emma's bottom lip began to tremble, and suddenly she was crying, not the silent tears of the past weeks, but real, honest sobs. Marcus immediately set down his cleaning supplies and knelt beside her chair. "It's okay, sweetheart," he said softly. "It's okay to be sad." Mitchell started to rise from his desk, but Marcus caught his eye and shook his head slightly. This moment belonged to Emma, and she needed to feel it without pressure. Emma cried for several minutes while Marcus simply stayed beside her, occasionally offering gentle words of comfort. When her sobs finally began to slow, she did something that surprised everyone. She reached out and grabbed Marcus's hand. "My mommy," she whispered, so quietly that Marcus almost didn't hear. But those two words hung in the air like a prayer. "You miss your mommy," Marcus said gently. Emma nodded, tears still flowing. "She's gone." "Yes, she is. And that makes you very sad." "I miss her songs," Emma whispered. "She sang to me every night." Marcus felt his own eyes fill with tears. "What was your favorite song that she sang?" Emma was quiet for a long moment. "Twinkle Star." "That's a beautiful song," Marcus said. "Would you like to sing it with me?" Emma looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes. But slowly, very slowly, she nodded. Marcus began to sing softly, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." At first, Emma just listened. But by the second verse, she was humming along. By the third time through, her small voice joined his, tentative but clear. Mitchell sat frozen at his desk, tears streaming down his face as he heard his daughter's voice for the first time in months. When the song ended, Emma looked up at Marcus. "Will you teach me more songs? The ones my mommy used to sing." "I would be honored to," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. From that day forward, Emma began to speak more and more. It started with single words, then short sentences, and finally full conversations. She would tell Marcus about her dreams, her memories of her mother, and her fears about the future. Marcus listened to everything with infinite patience and wisdom. Mitchell watched this transformation with growing amazement and gratitude. His hard-driving corporate world seemed less important now compared to these quiet moments when his daughter rediscovered her voice. 1 month later, on a sunny Friday morning, Mitchell called Marcus into his office for a private conversation. Emma was at her new preschool, a development that would have seemed impossible just weeks before. "Marcus," Mitchell began, his voice formal but his eyes emotional, "I need to tell you something. When Emma first came to live with me, when she wouldn't speak to anyone, the doctors, the therapists, even me, I made a promise to myself." Marcus waited quietly, sensing the importance of this moment. "I promised that if anyone could help her find her voice again, I would give them everything I had. My money, my company, everything. I was desperate, and I meant every word." Mitchell walked to his window and looked out at the city below. "But you know what I've learned, Marcus. You already have everything that matters. You have patience. You have kindness. You have the ability to see people, really see them, and meet them where they are." He turned back to face Marcus. "Emma is speaking again because of you. Not because of expensive doctors or therapists, but because a janitor with a good heart took the time to care about a broken little girl." Marcus felt uncomfortable with the praise. "I just did what felt right. Emma did all the hard work." "No," Mitchell said firmly. "What you did was extraordinary. And I want to do something for you in return." "Mr. Mitchell, that's not necessary. Seeing Emma happy is more than enough. I'm promoting you to head of building operations," Mitchell said. "It comes with a significant salary increase, a real office, and the respect you've always deserved. But more than that, I want you to know that you've changed my life too. You've shown me what real leadership looks like, leading with compassion instead of just authority." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I'm grateful for the offer, truly. But I like my work as it is. I like the quiet mornings, the chance to take care of people in small ways. Maybe instead of promoting me, you could just let me keep doing what I love, but maybe let me start an after-school program here in the building. For employees' children who need a safe place to go." Mitchell smiled, the first genuine smile Marcus had seen from him. "Done. Whatever you need." 6 months later, the 20th floor of Meridian Corporate Tower had been transformed. One wing had been converted into a cheerful after-school space where employees' children could come while their parents finished work. Marcus ran the program with the same gentle wisdom he had shown Emma, and it had become one of the most valued benefits the company offered. Emma visited often, now a confident, talkative 7-year-old who had become Marcus's unofficial assistant. She helped welcome new children to the program and had a special gift for making shy kids feel comfortable. On quiet afternoons, Marcus and Emma would still sit by the big window and sing songs together. Sometimes they sang the lullabies her mother had taught her, and sometimes they made up new songs about the people and stories they saw in the city below. Mitchell, meanwhile, had discovered that leading with compassion was not only more rewarding but also more effective than his old, demanding style. His company had never been more successful, and more importantly, he had never been happier. One evening, as the building emptied and the after-school program wound down, Emma helped Marcus clean up the playroom. "Marcus," she said thoughtfully as they put away the last of the art supplies, "do you remember when I couldn't talk?" "I remember," Marcus said gently. "I wasn't really unable to talk," Emma said. "I was just scared that if I talked about missing mommy, it would make the sadness too big to carry." Marcus knelt down to her level, as he had that first day when she was silent and hurting. "And what do you know now?" Emma smiled, her eyes bright with understanding far beyond her years. "Now I know that sharing sadness makes it smaller, and sharing happiness makes it bigger. And that some people, like you, are safe to share everything with." Marcus hugged her gently. "You are a very wise little girl, Emma. And you're a very good teacher, Marcus. Even if you're just a janitor." Marcus laughed softly. "Especially because I'm just a janitor. Sometimes the most important jobs are the ones that nobody notices." As they finished cleaning up together, the setting sun painted the city in warm golden light. Outside the windows, millions of people were heading home to their own families, their own stories, their own small miracles and quiet acts of love. Inside the 20th floor of Meridian Corporate Tower, a former janitor and a little girl who had found her voice again were proving that sometimes the most powerful transformations happen not through grand gestures or expensive solutions, but through simple human kindness offered one gentle moment at a time. The promise had been fulfilled, but not in the way anyone had expected. The CEO had been willing to give everything for his daughter's voice, but in the end, what she needed couldn't be bought or negotiated. It could only be given freely, by someone who understood that healing happens at its own pace, and that sometimes the most profound changes come from the most unlikely sources. And in the quiet of the evening, as Marcus locked up the building and headed home to his own family, he carried with him the satisfaction of knowing that tomorrow would bring new opportunities to make a difference in small, important ways. Because that's what janitors do, they clean things up, they fix what's broken, and they leave everything a little better than they found it. Even the things that seem too broken to fix. Especially those things